It's May 13th. In 2016, Friday the 13th occurred 2 days after Molly's funeral. The number 13 is significant to me in a million ways, and some of them long before Molly, but very, very much wrapped up in the reality of Molly. I was 13 years old when I told my mother about my sexual abuse, and so I had a very big life shift at age 13, going from childhood to teen years, I guess. As a child growing up, I always loved Friday the 13th. One of my favorite words was Triskaidekaphobia, which is a fear of the number 13. It was a number that it was intriguing to me sort of throughout my life. Kenny and I got married on Friday, October 13th, and it was a full moon. I remember there was a lot of, stuff on the news about the power of that particular Friday. It was also beautiful, 85 degrees right in October. Molly lived to be 13. She turned 13 and died a month later. Taylor Swift was born on December 13th. Lots of 13s in my life. So why am I talking about 13 on May 13th? Well, almost the past year of this podcast has been season 12, Spilling the Tea. As is typical in my life, I often have big ideas that I don't ever bring to fruition. The number of ideas I've had that I've never followed through on are really too many to count. So season 12, Spilling the Tea, was going to be a set number of episodes where just became very honest about things. But what was hard for me at the time in the fall is I felt like I was being snarky and spilling the tea and, here's the real story. And sometimes the real story is ugly. And I couldn't wrap my head around a way to do it meaningfully. Coupled with that, my mom moved in with me. And as is often the case with my family, I'm the one that does everything. So it's very easy for me to just not record a podcast episode for 2 weeks because I'm too busy helping everyone else. And if you got a little snark in there, you heard that correctly. So it's May 13th. Pondering with my web designer, just the podcast and getting more people to listen to it and all of that. We got talking about the seasons. And I'm like, I either need to commit to the seasons or I just need to stop with the seasons. And so we realized I'm on season 12. And I thought, season 13 is the best season to have be the last one. Molly lived to be 13. Once I'm done with season 13, I either end the podcast or perhaps the rest of it is just the rest of the story. And I stop organizing the podcast into seasons. It was very easy in the beginning because I was talking about different segments of my life. And so the seasons had cleared boundaries. And I had the season of guests and the seasons of truths and all those kinds of things. In deciding that we would end with season 13 or have a season 13, I needed to come up with a theme around it. And so I'm going to employ a little AI help and see what the major themes are that come out. And I think my web designer has already done this so that we could categorize it better. I'm going to take each theme and I'll do an episode or two, maybe have a guest related to around each theme. And also to kind of finish things up. I've told a lot of stories about my life. And at the time I started this podcast, I was still quite afraid of a lot of the people that have been a part of the ugly parts of my life. Afraid that I shouldn't be truthful or honest. And as time has gone by, and I realize how willing other people are to use mistruths to hurt people, aka me, I realize that I'm protecting the wrong person, that if I really want to protect somebody, I'll protect myself. Season 13 will be a season of tying things up. I have 2 or 3 thoughts in my head already. But I thought today I'd talk a little bit about the number 13. The biggest thing I remembered sort of growing up and being in school and culturally speaking is that 13 was an unlucky number, that Friday the 13th was a day to be feared. Movie theaters and tall buildings often don't have a 13th floor. It goes from 12 to 14. The Tower of Terror at Disneyland and Disney World is, a spinoff on the Twilight Zone, and the 13th floor of the hotel doesn't exist, but that's where you end up on the ride. I came up with great stuff about the number 13, and it actually really fits into where I'm at with being a woman and what it means to be a woman in this society and how many facets of society are seeking to redefine what a woman is and what the feminine means and all. And the number 13 is a female number. And after talking to my friend Jen, who wrote her book about, Lady Justice and the Sisterhood of the Crones, right? And the crone energy, older women, I found it all to sort of connect together, this number 13. So the number 13 symbolizes profound transformation, rebirth, and divine feminine energy. So that's a far cry from bad luck, right? That's a far cry from all the reasons we're taught to fear the number 13. It often represents the breaking of old patterns to allow new beginnings. Boy, that's a great place for me to be. While commonly feared as unlucky in Western culture due to biblical associations, primarily the betrayal of Judas, it is considered sacred or lucky in other traditions, symbolizing longevity and the 13 lunar cycles. So there are 13 full moons in a year. So understand that the cycle of the moon is 4 weeks. The true cycle of the menstrual cycle in a woman that's healthy is roughly every 28 days, 4 weeks. So there are 13 full moons in a year, and a woman with a healthy expected menstrual cycle has 13 periods a year. That's a pretty significant connection to the number 13 for all you female-bodied humans out there. So transformation, rebirth, that struck my mind right away, because when you lose a child, you're trying very hard to transform and to learn and grow and be okay, while at the same time wanting everything to stay the same. So how do you rebirth yourself and transform if what you're trying to do is keep everything the same? Huge struggle for grieving moms or grieving anybody's. 13 is seen as in numerology as a catalyst for change, shifting from the stability of 12 into a new phase of evolution. So I think of a baker's dozen, which is 13, right? A dozen is 12. Yeah, so you have a nice even number, 12, 2 teams of 6, 4 teams of 3, 3 teams of 4, whatever, 6 teams of 2, and then 13 comes and upsets the apple cart a little bit, shakes the footing. Sacred feminine energy is associated with the goddess, as opposed to God, goddess, the goddess in the sky. The womb and lunar cycles. So the womb is, the where menstruation occurs from. The lining of the uterus sheds because there's no baby growing and you have a period. Very connected to reproduction and fertility and the female reality of being designed to grow and produce new life. So 13 full moons in a year and 13 menstrual cycles. And this is supposed to represent intuition and creativity. I'm not sure when I was in the throes of a really crampy, heavy period, I was feeling creative or intuitive, but I'll go with it. So lucky 13 and longevity. So here's another sort of opposite to the unlucky part of 13. In Chinese culture, the number 13 sounds like definitely alive or long life. I don't know the Chinese language to know those connections, but linguistically speaking, that's what it sounds like. And in Italy, it has been historically considered a lucky number associated with hitting the jackpot. All right. Jack's baseball number this year is 13, and it's actually funny. Kenny and I got sort of laughed at. We were going through the shirts to see what numbers were left, and we both went, "Oh my God, 13!" And we grabbed it, and of course, people looked at us like we were nuts, but he has good old 13, so I'm hoping that just becomes his number in all the sports he might play with numbers on the shirts. Rebellion and transformation. So here's a different sort of transformation where it isn't some pretty spiritual transformation that I tend to picture, but more of transforming through the act of rebellion. So this is a more biblical context. It can symbolize rebellion against established, rigid systems, leading to a new, higher order of grace. Well, that's lovely. I'm not sure I can witness in society right now any connection to the number 13 in that, but that's interesting. Cultural context. So Triskaidekaphobia, the clinical fear of the number 13. So it could be like agoraphobia, claustrophobia, whatever your phobias are, the clinical fear of the number 13, leading to the omission of 13th floors in buildings or 13th rows on airplanes. Friday the 13th, while considered unlucky, it is ironically seen by many as a powerful day for manifesting goals and connecting with the feminine energy of Venus. So one of my favorite books years ago was called Men Are From Mars, Women Are From Venus. And planetarily and astrologically speaking, Mars is a very masculine reality planet and Venus is a very feminine reality planet. And the book was fantastic. It laid out so many sort of situations between males and females that you wouldn't think of when you're in the throes of it, right? We're going to apply our female thought process to situations, whereas men would apply their male thought process. So many disagreements with married couples, I think, come from the differences between men and women. The Last Supper. So this is really the biblical connection to negative 13 being a negative thing. There were 12 disciples and Jesus. So 13 people at that Last Supper. One of them betrayed him, which he said, "One of you will betray me." That was Judas, and Jesus was crucified, the following week, that next day. So from a Christian perspective, 13 can be seen as a very negative and an unlucky number, although Christ prophesied it, so I don't always connect the number to it, but I can see why people do. In Molly B. the Musical, Robin Grant did a piece called 13 Beautiful Things, and it was 13 people that were connected to Molly who each had a role in her life. It was a wonderful thing, and they all shared stories of Molly's. There's sacred geometry. Okay, I've never found anything to do with math is sacred, but here we go. Mystical and geometric symbolism, sacred geometry. The Metatron's cube contains 13 circles, which can form the 5 Platonic solids, considered the building blocks of physical reality. There are 5 Platonic solids that are considered the building blocks of physical reality. That's good to know. I'm going to have to look all this up when I'm done. Angelic significance. Some view 13 as an angel number, encouraging positive thinking and adaptation during challenging life changes. Well, that would certainly connect to Molly. 13 could definitely be her angel number because she had 13 years on Earth here. It encourages positive thinking. She was always somebody that was trying to look on the bright side of things. So I like that connection. And I have a picture here, the picture with the circles. So this is, I don't know, for those of you that are watching, 13 circles. It's probably hard to see. It's beautiful though. There's a circle in the middle and flowers around it. A circle in the middle, 6 flowers around that, and then 6 flowers outside, or circles rather. All right, so the power of the number 13. Why is this number powerful besides the pretty circle designs and the particles of the universe and feminine energy and periods and full moons? There, but that's quite a bit, but why? Okay. So what is the power of the number 13? Why the distraction and fear around this number? Because the true meaning of number 13 is that it's a sacred feminine number. Now, a lot of the pushing down of women comes out of fear. There's not too many men in the world that won't acknowledge that women are by far stronger, smarter, more adaptable, higher pain tolerance than men. Yes, men are physically stronger and bigger. Athletically speaking, if there's a contest, male-bodied humans are going to overpower female-bodied humans. That's the reality of the design of our bodies and what our bodies are meant to do. The number 13 is a very feminine number, which might explain why it was thought to be made to be considered evil. When you look back at witches in the 1600s, oftentimes women that created concoctions and potions to make people well were considered witches. But if you look at a pharmacist in a pharmacy grinding down ingredients to make pills, medicine to make people well, that's a pharmacist, right? So in the 1600s, they're witches, and in the 2000s, they're pharmacists. Just an interesting change. So the fruit of life, the number 13, the fruit of life, like we've mentioned in our sacred geometry blog, I don't know who they are, but curves and circles are connected to feminine energies, which is very true. And straight lines are connected to masculine energies. The fruit of life consists of 13 circles. So that's what I just showed you, which is the predecessor of Metatron's cube, which is male and female energies combined. That's how you make new babies, right? You combine the energies. Basically see the fruit of life as the womb of the universe. The fruit of life as the womb of the universe, that picture. Interesting. Another big universal connection to the number 13 is Venus. As I said, Venus is considered a feminine energy. Another connection to the sacred geometry is the famous dance of Venus and Earth around the sun. Venus is known to be connected to feminine energies and Mars with masculine energies. Once every 8 years, Venus and Earth create a 5-pointed star formation known as the Rose of Venus. Did not know. Every 8 years, 5-pointed star. 8 plus 5, 13. In addition, if you convert the Earth, the 8 Earth years, to Venusian years, number of years in Venus, it is equal to 13 years. This is because Venus has a smaller orbit. Sometimes I think these, manipulating numbers gets far-fetched. It reminds me of when I coached cross country, we would make our numbers add up to 7. All of my runners who are still running and competing, whenever they get a bib number for a race that is a 7 or adds up to 7, I always get a little message that we just made them add up to 7. It was pretty amazing. So I get it. The things we can do to get the numbers to say what we want them to say can be unique, but I was actually incredibly surprised to find all this feminine connection to the number 13. So the moon is also very strongly connected to the number 13. And this I know, if you hang around any really hardcore feminists, lots of feminists have the moon cycles tattooed on their bodies. And the cycles of the moon are very connected to menstrual cycles, right? So you have 4 weeks. Each week of the lunar cycle has a different meaning. There's waxing gibbous and half moon and waning gibbous and full moon and new moon, which is no moon at all. Like it's this, the circle of life kind of thing. And it happens 13 times. And as I said, women get 13 periods if they have them every 4 weeks. There is scientific evidence as well that women are most fertile during a full moon. So, if you're having your period on the full moon, I would say not. But if you're ovulating on the full moon, I should look up the dates I got pregnant and see where the moon was at. I think I just might do that. That'd be funny. Okay, there are all these other geometrical connections to the number 13 that were way over my head, so I'm not going to include them here. I'm going to include the names of them. And if you want to go look it up and explain it to me, that would be great. It's more with sacred geometry and the number 13. The Fibonacci sequence, which is a sequence of numbers that have sacred significance, and you can find them in nature throughout the universe. Maybe you find them in the patterns on leaves or the number of petals on a flower, patterns in the bark of a tree. Like there are lots of things in nature that coincide numerically to 13. Then there's the Archimedean solids. There's Platonic solids and Archimedean solids, and I don't know what these solids are. They're solids that make the basic shapes of the universe that then formulate everything in the universe, fitting in somehow to those shapes. Interesting stuff, but way over my head. So the conclusion is that the number 13 is nothing to be afraid of. Even better, it's something to embrace. Embrace the number 13. It symbolizes sacred feminine energies, which was feared by the church back in the days, and maybe still is. I think a lot of what's happening to women in our culture right now, because let me be clear, birth sex girls have a very, very, very difficult reality right now. And I think sometimes it's part of the bigger picture. I think for women to rise up and truly rise up and show their power, they have to be held down. I think that's just nature. It's also maybe bad cultural tradition. So I think sometimes it's all part of a bigger picture that we can understand. But the number 13 symbolizes sacred feminine energies, which are feared by the church. In addition, number 13 is a creational and transformational energy, which you can use in many ways to empower yourself on your amazing spiritual journey. So if you're not spiritual, I don't think it means the number 13 is nothing for you. I think you can look at it scientifically and numerically and leave the touchy-feely, hoopy spiritual stuff out of it. But it's a significant number for me. And now that I've read all of this, I'm going to endeavor to do some more research on the number 13. So this will be the closing episode of season 12, the rest of the story, spilling the tea, actually. Season 13 will be, I'll have some wonderful guests, which I often do. I like having guests on the podcast. But it will be, I'm going to really, really look at major issues in my life. I have childhood sexual abuse in my life. I have divorce in my life. I have biological reality, finding out that my father isn't my father and somebody else is, and what is a definition of a father for me. I have all of the fallout of growing up as an abused child in my adult decision making, and how what I've come to find out in my podcast journey, in my research on trauma, is that my biggest scars come from the manipulation of truth, not the abuse itself, but being told to be quiet and being given the responsibility of managing all of it. And so I look at my behaviors in my job loss, which I'll do a lot of wrapping up on that. I look at my behaviors on the treatment of me by Amy and Roy. Mind-bogglingly clear now. And in going back and rereading emails and texts and things, which I have from the last 15 years, there's clarity in there that I have never allowed myself to see. Look at how I reacted to my job loss. What I learned in life as a child was that it was my job to be quiet. Talk about fearing the feminine energy, right? And so I did. Now, as loud and boisterous and talkative as I am, I will sit in freeze mode in the middle of a traumatic experience and do nothing. I did it as recently as a school board meeting when they all went off on me and I just sat there. I didn't even know what to say. I just sat. And in my head, I'm like, Barbara, say something. And I couldn't. I'll talk a lot about that. I'll talk a lot about running. You know, I'm getting back into running a bit again in the running community. And that was such a huge piece of my life. I couldn't imagine not running anymore. And then when I lost my job and Gene Connolly just smeared my name so badly in the running community, which I think he did to build up his daughter. I don't know. I can't speculate why he was the way he was, but I just stayed away from it. I just stayed away, and it was heartbreaking, you know. So I'll get into a lot of that. And I'll get into a book I'd like to write, which I've talked about, called Surviving the Wrath. And I'll spell wrath, W-R-A-T-H. But I'm really talking about the 13 separation agreements that this woman, this superintendent, facilitated in her 20-year career as a superintendent. She was forcing somebody to resign pretty much every year she was a school leader. When you look at before her and after her, there are none. And she didn't just happen to find a bunch of bad teachers. She looked for things to take power of. So I can really truly tell my true story. And now all that I know that went into it with school officials and with Amy and Roy. And then Molly's death and all the medical stuff that I've been told to be quiet about. I will find a way to really share the harsh, disgusting reality of what that experience was like. So that will be season 13. It will be kind of a wrap up, so to speak. When I picture season 13, I picture a big fancy wrapped package with a bow on top and inside all the facts. But I don't know. It's May 13th. You'll hear this on May 19th, but I'm recording it on the 13th, realizing that in 2016, this was a Friday. I remember getting ready for Molly B, the musical. We had like a week, just over a week to get it done, and we did. It was beautiful. 13. Woohoo! So share with me your thoughts on 13 and if it's lucky for you or not and what you think about it in the feminine energy and how the masculine fears the power of the feminine. In my crone stage, I buy into that big time. So be good to yourself. Be good to someone else. Thank you for listening always. And let's bring on season 13. Have a good day, everybody. Hey, thanks for listening and supporting the podcast. Feel free to leave a review and share my stories with your friends. Please reach out with your own stories, as I love connecting with my listeners. If you would like to get to know Molly, head over to mollybfoundation.org to see what she is all about. If you want to see what I'm up to next, you can find me on Instagram at barb_444, on Facebook as Barb Higgins, and at my website, 1000tinysteps.com. And while you're there, sign up for my newsletter, a weekly way to find out what's up in the life of Barb Higgins.